If you think you don't have any ideas anymore, or you don't know how to find one, or you just don't know how to start, this video is absolutely for you. Hi guys, what's going on? My name is Ash. I'm gonna tell you how to develop, create and find an idea. If this is your first time here and you love architecture and want to learn more about it, start now by subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. Complexity is not the same as complicated. It's not doing complex shapes. You need to understand that complexity that you're building have multiple meanings and depth. And every good architect in every fascinating building, whether it's less is more or less is more approach of design, has complexity and depth in their design and their building. Zoom in and zoom out. What I mean is to think of the context when designing something. For example, let's say you are designing a sink. You might zoom out and think of how the sink will look and feel on the wall. Zoom out a little further and you can think of the wall decorations fits the house. Zoom out even more and think of how the house fits into the neighborhood. After you study all the entire context, you can zoom all the way back into the sink, then think of a design that you have thought before you consider the context. A lot of us find it very hard to start the design, even you don't know where to start. Even when you finish the project and it's time for a new project, times like these where doubts start creeping in your head and you start wondering, can I do all this all over again? What if I couldn't? What if I couldn't find a new idea? Is this was the last one? Am I even good enough to start a new project? And even if I am capable to do all this all over again, is it going to be better than the last one or it's gonna be worse? If you have these thoughts, you're not alone. We all like that. Don't worry. That's why I'm here today. I want to help you to find new ideas. Arthur Koestler, in his book, talked about bisociation. Bisociation is a term that describes the simultaneous mental association of linking an idea or object with two completely separate and unrelated fields. It advocates unconditional thinking that aims to remove common beliefs and repetitive thought processes that often lead to similar results. The aim is to avoid alterations to existing ideas and to create transformations instead. This can be achieved by accepting the limitations to common solutions and aiming to exceed and advance on the previous methods used to create them. This method is about helping to ensure that no two ideas are the same and provides each new project with a level of originality in its development and thinking. Practically, how can we do that? I'll give you a great example. Most of you know the Sears Tower in Chicago by Bruce and Basler. What happens is the two partners was having lunch together and discussing and thinking about a concept for an office tower that it needs of a novel approach for what was to be the tallest building in the world. Both of them agreed that a series of tubes with shared walls was an extremely efficient way to support a tall building, but that gonna make it yield. It said that Graham stopped and looked down to grab a cigarette. Then he grabbed a small bundle of them in his fist and he proceeded to push and pull them to different heights. At this moment he had an idea and he said of each tube were staggered vertically, both their slenderness and their structural integrity would be preserved. If you look very close at this story, you can realize the bisociation. He linked an idea of skyscraper with a bunch of cigarettes, two things completely not related to each other, provided the concept for the Sears Tower, and that's what you can do. The same thing with Burj Khalifa. The concept of the skyscraper is the desert flower. But bisociation requires unconditional thinking. That's how he found his concept. When you define a concept, it literally means an abstract idea a plan or intention or idea invention to help. You can be inspired by birds, painting, animals, anything. The purpose of an architectural concept is to get your project and approach consistent, and it helps sell your project. So, how to start? Which is the most intimidating part, but with these steps you will have a strong project. The four stages of creative thinking: preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. There is a common concept developed by an English social psychologist named Graham Wallace, who believed that the creative process can be divided into four stages. In the first stage, your brain collects information to form components of an idea. Preparation. In the second stage, you allow your mind to make contact and formulate information gathered into loose thoughts. Incubation. In the third stage, you make connections between ideas. Illumination. And in the fourth stage, the collected creative ideas are refined through deeper critical thinking in order to reach a strong conclusion and results. Verification. This creative process provides a complete way to generate creative ideas from just the hint of an idea. Let's go more deep in each step. Preparation. Creativity doesn't start with an idea. The idea has to come from somewhere, much like a cake recipe. You first have to combine the ingredients to form the desired result. This stage of process is where you gather information, components, in preparation for it, and form a chain of influences that leads to the development of an idea. This provides foundations and lays the foundation for future thinking and development by researching questions, understanding the contexts, and design brief through vast research and site analysis. And you can learn more about site analysis in the description, but let me explain what site analysis is. Before you start the design and thinking about your concept, first you have to consider the zoning code, regulations, and site analysis. It should always be the first thing to start with. You will need to identify the key constraints, features, and characteristics of the site and the surrounding context. Look how it works. First, you collect these informations, then make a little big scale to show you the site in more context. Then done one that a bit closer to the site. Here you can see the neighborhood and what is near to the project location. Is there a church, market, or school? This stuff is very useful according to the type of the project. Is your project a house, mall, or school? And etc. Then zoom in a little more in order to see the main streets and squares that lead to the project site. That could help you to decide where the good entrance should be, and many things else. Now you have the opportunities and constraints diagram, which is just diagram where you show how you will use your site analysis in your design. What you should have in this step is local climate, winds, solar aspects, vegetation, building context, history, special abilities, opportunities, and legal frameworks. This is the first part of site analysis. The next part is information we will gather from the client. Think of others. Some architects have been known for examining the patterns and behavior of their clients. They are designing a home for them. They consider if they are a morning person or night owl, if they like to cook, what they do for living, and so on. After you thought very carefully about your client's needs, now you can design just right for them. Well, the main information you have to gather from the client: beliefs, culture, preferences, agendas, politics, and budget. And the third type of information you have to gather is related to the building typology. Is it a museum, home, or school? And etc. Then you search well about this type to know all the good stuff you can do and all the bad stuff you can ignore. After that, you want to know the essential problems this type of structure grapple with. Understanding the history of the archetype allows us to approach a problem from a fresh perspective. Then you go to the next step, incubation. This stage happens in the unconscious. The previous stage, preparation, has filled the mind with all the information to proceed. The incubation period makes the unconscious mind get used to it, because after you know all these informations, you are able to discover the problem, and this is the incubation period. And Wallace suggests that working on multiple problems at once actually increases the incubation period. Literally means incubation, you embrace the information. This period to be worth and fruitful, this forces the mind away from developing a singular solution into a place where it's unconsciously investing several briefs at once. This includes thinking indirectly and unconsciously of the president by leaving your thought process straight and intentionally doing something completely unrelated to the problem. Research has shown that by letting your mind wander this way, it leads to finding connections, identifying what's important, and testing ideas. Keep in mind that the creativity process takes time, that the seed must be planted early. This certainly falls in this area. The process is similar to waking up from your desk after drawing a floor plan or preparing a display picture, and back to find that you often see it a little differently, and notice the areas you have been blind to. Illumination. Illumination follows undefined period of incubation. It's that beam of light shining down from the clouds upon the patch of earth you have never seen before. When ideas begin to reveal themselves, I know that illumination is near. Usually these thoughts, or as Wallace calls them, trains of association, precede another round of ideas that press a little further forward and eventually to the solution. Illumination doesn't drop a fully formed idea on your desk. You have to work at it, building layer upon layer of trace, testing and sketching, and applying physical effort. Draw a model and test everything you've learned. And don't be afraid to create more than one solution to a problem, as this can help evaluate other solutions and may bring parts of each idea into a complete set. Verification. Finally, test and refine ideas to reach the ultimate goal, and think about how they would present them to the audience and addresses the problem they were asked to solve. This does not have to be a finished building, but it can be part of it, or just a concept, regardless of the area or size of the design problem. This method can be expanded or minimized independently. After these steps, the 4 stages of creative thinking, there is 5 things to do and consider. Constraints. Constraints and limitations are essential to any design project and truly provide the backbone for a specific problem or requirement, helping to define the shape its success. Project constraints can be anything from client or user-oriented to legal or technical, and they should present an opportunity to innovate and push boundaries forward, rather than limit your creative response. These constraints is your chance to be creative and do unexpected design. The limitations associated with a specific project are what make it unique and what should make your response to it original. Thus, it's often open to interpretation, and this will vary from designer to designer or architect to architect. They also provide a kind of rule book and a set of guidelines to go along with them, which provide direction and guidance for the design process, because without that, the possibilities would be endless and potentially completely out of control. An example of a constraint at its most basic level is a site boundary, watercourse, tree, or protected structure, and more complex restrictions may be to allow disabled access, program requirements, or ground conditions. 2. Precedents. You should collect everything that inspires you. Study and memorize it. It may not be relevant when you discover it at the first time, but when you need it, you will know how to use it. The deadlines. Time constraints are very important because without them, we wouldn't have any way of knowing when to stop. There is a common scenario that shows that if you have one day to complete a task, that is the time when you will do it. But if you have 3 days to complete the same task itself, then this is also the time it will take you to complete it in. We all need deadlines, and releasing them yourself can speed up your design process and make you more efficient. Watching. By looking at and observing your surroundings, it will help you to appreciate and see things from an alternate perspective. Learn how to observe other people's thoughts and ask yourself why you like or dislike them and how you can improve them if they are in their place. Training yourself to look for the unclear and ask questions about things that not everyone else sees will provide you with a deeper understanding with the elements and influences around you. And then this will begin to flow into your own business and introduce it to a greater depth. Do the opposite. When issuing a design issue, spend some time initially trying to take everyone else's direction and look for alternate avenues or work. Or when drawing a block diagram, flip it upside down or flip it on the other side. You would be surprised how much the same arrangement looks from an alternate direction. Those are the basics of how to think, develop, and find an idea or concept. But during this process, you have to know yourself well. You have to force your brain to think all the time. Because if you can't make your brain work all the time and think all the time, this process gonna take a lot of time to end. And that was all for today. Thank you for watching. But first, I would like to know, how do you usually develop your ideas and what are the difficulties you face during the design process? Tell me in the comments. And if you love architecture and want to learn more about it, please consider subscribing. Have a nice day and